If you're going to zero a rifle scope, meaning adjust it so that when you shoot at a target, the bullet will hit the target, its point of impact will be the same point at which you are aiming, that is your point of aim. And I should mention this is always for some particular given distance. If you're doing that, zeroing a scope, you're going to encounter these two abbreviations, MOA and MIL. MOA stands for minute of arc or arc minute, but when people are talking about rifles and scopes, they normally call it minute of angle. We all know what a degree is. We're familiar with a 90-degree angle. We know that one full circular rotation is 360 degrees. Well, 1 minute of angle is 1/60th of a degree. Expressed as a decimal, it's approximately 0.0166 degree. It's an extremely tiny angle. To put in perspective how small 1 minute of angle is, if you hold an aspirin tablet out at full arm's length, it's covering approximately 1 degree. A minute of angle is 1/60th of that. It's an extremely tiny angle. It's a very handy coincidence that if you fire 2 shots at a target 100 yards away, and if between the 2 shots you vary the angle of the barrel by 1 minute of angle, the 2 points of impact on the target will be 1 inch apart. I should mention that this diagram is not drawn to scale. 1 minute of angle is such an extremely tiny angle that if I drew it accurately on this diagram, we wouldn't be able to see it. So I've made the angle appear a great deal larger than it really would be. Now consider shooting at first a 100-yard distance. You can see the 100-yard distance marked at the top of the diagram. And if 1 MOA produces a 1 inch difference between 2 points of impact at 100 yards, then we can see from the diagram that if we go out to 200 yards, that's going to be a 2-inch variation. Since 1 minute of angle produces approximately 1 inch of separation between points of impact at 100 yards, and we saw that at 200 yards, therefore, it would be 2 inches. Well, at 50 yards, it would be half an inch. At 300 yards, 3 inches, and so forth. The distance between the points of impact will be proportional to the distance to the target. Why do we even think about minute of angle? One reason is to give us a consistent way of comparing marksmanship. Consider this shooter who places 2 shots 6 inches apart at 20 yards. Now consider another marksman whose 2 shots are farther apart. Instead of being 6 inches apart, they're 10 inches apart. However, they are shooting out to 200 yards. So whose group of shots is tighter? Who is the better, more consistent marksman? Is it this marksman shooting a 6-inch group at 20 yards? Or is it this marksman shooting a wider group, a 10-inch group, but doing it at 200 yards? Well, clearly it's this marksman. A 6-inch group at 20 yards would be the same as a 30-inch group at 100 yards, and that would be 30 minutes of angle. A 10-inch group at 200 yards would be the same as a 5-inch group at 100 yards, and that's only 5 minutes of angle, which obviously is very much better. There's another reason for thinking about the minute of angle unit other than being able to evaluate your own marksmanship or compare it to someone else's marksmanship. It's a very practical reason having to do with the fact that a rifle scope can be adjusted left, right, and up and down, moving the point of aim. That process is called zeroing the scope. Our goal is to get the point of aim, the crosshairs, to match on the target the point of impact of the bullet. Adjusting the scope, zeroing the scope, is accomplished with adjusting screws under these two turrets. And I'll show you what those screws look like. There's the one that moves the scope up and down. Those screws click when you turn them, and typically one click is 1/4 of a minute of angle. So 4 clicks will give you 1 minute of angle, and that allows you to move the point of impact on the target up, down, left, right. And in another video, I'll explain clearly and in detail how to go through that process. Let's go ahead and take a quick look at what this means. Imagine that those 3 red points are shots that I've fired, and we'll assume it's from 100 yards. Notice that that group is 2 inches to the right of the bullseye and 2 inches below the bullseye. That means I need to use the adjusting screws to move the group 2 inches to the left and up 2 inches. Well, at 100 yards, an inch is 1 MOA, so 2 inches is 2 MOAs. Since my scope is 4 clicks to 1 MOA, for 2 MOAs I need 8 clicks. So I will adjust that group 8 clicks to the left, and then, since I need to go up 2 inches, I will adjust it up 8 clicks, and that should put my next group, if I shoot consistently, on the bullseye, just like that. Now that we understand minute of angle, understanding mil will be easy and quick. It works in exactly the same way. The only difference is the angle and therefore the distance between points of impact at, say, 100 yards. Mil, in the context of shooting, is an abbreviation for milliradian, 1,000th of a radian. There are people who think that it stands for military because in the military, the mil is commonly used instead of a minute of angle. But mil is short for milliradian, 1,000th of a radian. The radian is a unit of angular measurement used in mathematics sometimes for particular reasons that don't concern us here. But if you look at the diagram, the radius of that circle, and this can be any size circle, the radius here is marked in blue. If we reproduce that same distance on the circumference of that circle, then the angle subtended by that arc on the circumference, that red arc, the angle subtended is 1 radian. 1 radian is approximately equal to 57.3 degrees, and because a milliradian is 1/1000th of a radian, it is approximately equal to 0.0573 degrees. That is larger than a minute of angle, but it's still a very, very small angle. If 2 shots are fired at a target from a distance of 100 yards and the angle of the barrel varies between the 2 shots by an angle of 1 milliradian, the distance between the 2 points of impact on the target will be approximately 3.6 inches. There are scopes that use the mil as their increment for adjustment, and on those scopes 1 click is typically 1/10 of a mil, which moves the point of impact 0.36 inch, or a little more than 1/3 of an inch, and we can compare that with the 1/4 inch that a click on a typical minute of angle calibrated scope produces. So there's not really much difference. The optics are the same. There's nothing about the optics that varies between a minute of angle calibrated scope and a mil calibrated scope. It's just the adjustment. Before we finish, we will look at 2 examples quickly. Suppose I'm shooting out to 300 yards and my barrel angle varies by 5 minutes of angle. Well, that's going to produce, 5 minutes of angle at 100 yards would be 5 inches. At 200 yards, it would give me a 10-inch difference between points of impact. And out to 300 yards, then my points of impact will be 15 inches apart. Does that all make sense? Now let's consider an example with a variation in barrel angle of 1/2 a mil shooting out to 50 yards. Well, a mil at 100 yards is 3.6 inches of variation. So at 50 yards, it would be half of that, which would be 1.8 inches, but it's only 1/2 a mil, so we only get half of 1.8 inches. So we have 0.9 inch distance between the 2 points of impact, 1/2 a mil at 50 yards. Did that make sense? Well, that's it for minute of angle and milliradian, mil. I hope you'll be able to put it to use, and I hope maybe you enjoyed learning about it. Thank you for watching.